Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2, and this is part 2 of my video series where I discuss the topic of why conservatism creates miserable societies. So, for this video, I'm just continuing on with the point I was making for the last video, and of course, the very last point, the third point, for the topic of why conservatism creates miserable societies. And to continue on with my second point from the last video, where I was discussing, like part two of, my second point for my last video, which was finishing up, is that conservatism, it just encourages media censorship. Because when you look at the history of conservatism, there's just always been for media censorship. It wasn't even that long ago, they were calling for a ban on video games and stuff, or extremely strict laws that would restrict video games, specifically the Grand Theft Auto series. They hated a lot, and I still remember that. And that was over 20-some years ago, and I remember how much hate Grand Theft Auto got at the time. So that's honest truth, okay? So that's the second reason to finish on my second point, why conservatism creates miserable societies. It takes away media freedom, when it comes to entertainment. Even watching a simple movie with somebody getting shot and basic drugs and all this type of stuff, which is just meant to be entertainment anyway, something to take too seriously. If conservatives had their way, they wouldn't even have any of it, because they ruin everything. That's honest truth. Okay, so that's the end of my second point. Now on to the third point, why conservatism creates miserable societies, is that it simply comes down to the fact that conservatives create a setup that encourages left-right paradigm. And a left-right paradigm, if you're not familiar with the term, is the idea of something going from one extreme to another extreme. That is exactly what a left-right paradigm is. Okay? So when it comes to the topic of a left-right paradigm, conservatives are definitely very, very, very guilty of creating a left-right paradigm, to be quite blunt and honest with you, okay? Because on one hand, they create a society that's very strict, and the people are miserable, and it's very mediocre, but it creates a sense of order, and when you start having a society where people start speaking up and start saying, okay, this is wrong, living in a society with so much restrictions, we don't even get to enjoy anything. So yeah, back to what I was saying, because I had to do something just now. It creates a situation where people start getting freedom because they realize, yes, your society is orderly, but it's very boring. Nothing really happens. And they start getting a hint of freedom. It encourages people who are not very good people, to take advantage of that movement of freedom, who have absolutely no morals whatsoever, and it just creates this clash of different ways of thinking. Okay, which creates a lot of problems, a lot of conflicts, which we can clearly see happen in America, especially from the 1960s all the way on to the 1990s. It just creates this culture war between when are you taking things too far for one specific thing, whether it comes to social issues, the type of entertainment you look at, whatever, You see what I'm saying? Like, that's exactly what I'm trying to say here, okay? It encourages people who are just opportunists to take over something and fuck it up instead of society kind of letting, creating a situation where we can kind of go like, okay, let's draw the line here of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. You see what I'm saying? And with a perfect example of that being entertainment, okay? And when you look at American entertainment only a few decades ago, it was very restricted, okay? There wasn't much cussing. People didn't, not only was there not much cussing, there was not much violence, there was not much, discussions about certain particular maybe topics, in general, relationships, like sex and all that type of stuff, you know, all that type of stuff, okay? And then, because of those people, encouraged a counterculture, which, oh Lord have mercy, I hate countercultures, um, of people who hated that stuff, but these people, okay, took things too freaking damn far. And now we see how society is nowadays. The things, the degeneracy we see, in music. Okay, we turn on the radio, there are songs being played that is meant for a mainstream audience that are really talking about sex. Okay, we live in a society where there's movies that talk about things that are very inappropriate, such as rape, people being raped, homosexual relationships, and all these things that are very immoral. Okay, but the thing is, this instead of just blaming the so-called liberals, as they like to call them, or more like libtards, which is the more specific term they call them. The truth of the matter is, this is an example of what a left-right paradigm is. You put people under this much restriction, and stuff. It encourages a situation that when people start rebelling, some people are rebelling for opportunists. They just take things to a whole different direction instead of society just making up its mind, or the media, whatever you like to say, of what's a balance of what is going too far for anything. Okay, and that's exactly the problem with conservatism. It just encourages people to create countercultures where they will just do things the complete exact opposite. Okay, this is why when you create things, you have to set a good balance, okay, for things in general. Okay, it's just like, as I was saying, kind of explains my point. You put people under all these restrictions, and the moment you give them freedom, they go fucking wild. And that's an example of what I'm trying to get across here. Okay, you put people on these restrictions, tell them don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, and you give them a bit of freedom, and they go wild. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get across with why things are both societies. It just doesn't balance things out properly, and it just encourages the time people get a little bit of freedom, they go fucking wild, which is definitely not helped by the fact that there's sometimes opportunists who are just sometimes maybe straight up crazy, who help pave the way for that type of madness to happen, because they serve as leaders and so on and so forth. So in short, that's another problem with conservatism. It just encourages wild shit to happen. Okay, because they put so much restrictions on people, and the moment people get a little bit of freedom, they just go fucking wild. And that's exactly what we're kind of seeing here in America, with the lack of morals and so on and so forth. And not just America, but the Western world, let alone the world, but specifically the Western world. And that is honest truth. Okay. So anyway, this is my video, and simply put it, those are my points I made, those 3 points I made for the first of this video series, and this second, on my video series. These are all the 3 points I made in my overall 2-part video series on why conservatism creates miserable societies. And the lesson that there is to learn is that this is why in life you have to not just listen to what everybody says. You have to actually, use critical thinking. Because a lot of people nowadays online are being brainwashed to think that conservatives are the ones who have no holds bar mindset when it comes to liberty and freedom and so on and so forth, and talk about liberals want to cancel everything and how they're too woke and all this sort of crap. But when you look at the history of it, it was actually conservatives who were the ones who wanted to take away our freedoms for everything, whether it can be our freedoms to speak up against abusive authority, whether it could be our freedoms when it comes to media we look at, and even just down to creating to a situation that paves the way for people who are opportunists who will just fuck up everything. So in short, to sum up my point to the fullest degree, this is why you don't let people brainwash you to believe a false narrative that's not true. as I'm old enough to know a lot of these things these conservatives are saying is bullshit. And when it comes to the idea that conservatism makes society a better place, it's definitely bullshit, as it restricts our freedoms um, to the fullest degree when you truly live in a conservative society. So, in short, conservatism does not make better societies. It encourages abusive, hurtful, um, and even straight up torturous societies that torture people, in a sense, with how badly they treat people, let alone doesn't give much people freedom of what they want to look at, and let alone what they want to do with their lives. And that is the honest truth. So, in short, do not believe everything you hear. Conservatism is not for freedom. Conservatism is actually anti-freedom. So don't just believe everything you hear on the internet. So anyway, this is my video. This is off to say. If you like this video, remember to thumbs this video up and the subscribe button, and simply put on out. So bye.